I never thought betrayal would come from within my own family. You spend your whole life working, building, providing, and then one day you realize the people closest to you don't see your love. They see what you own. My name is Thomas Wade. I'm 58 years old, and I thought I'd seen just about everything life could throw at me. I lost my wife to cancer 8 years ago. I raised my son Ethan by myself after that, and I poured every ounce of love, money, and energy I had into giving him a stable future. I thought the hardest part of my life was behind me. But I was wrong. It wasn't a stranger who tried to rob me. It wasn't some masked burglar breaking in at night. It was my own daughter-in-law, my son's wife, Marissa, and the way it happened, the way she looked at me when she thought she could get away with it, is something I'll never forget. But what she saw when she opened that drawer, that's what broke her. Let me tell you how it all started. I met Marissa the same way most fathers meet their son's wife, through Ethan's nervous introduction at a family dinner. He was 26 at the time, fresh out of graduate school, and he'd always been the kind of young man who wore his heart on his sleeve. Ethan had a good job in software development. He was responsible, loyal, and careful with his choices. When he told me he was serious about a woman, I trusted his judgment. Marissa was striking, that's the word for her. Beautiful, confident, the kind of woman who walks into a room and immediately knows everyone's looking at her. She had that big laugh, that quick smile, and I'll be honest, I wanted to like her. For Ethan's sake, I needed to like her. At first, everything seemed fine. She worked in real estate, always dressed sharp, and she had this way of talking about future plans as if life was already hers for the taking. Big houses, expensive cars, vacations in Europe. I thought it was just youthful ambition. Ethan had always been more grounded, so I figured they'd balance each other out. But there were moments, tiny cracks, that made me pause. The first time she came over to my house, her eyes roamed the living room like she was scanning it. Not just looking at the photos or the furniture. No, she was calculating. Later, at dinner, she asked me, "So, Mr. Wade, where do you keep all your savings from the shop days? I bet a man like you has a good stash." I laughed it off. My shop gave me enough to get by. I keep what I need, nothing more. But the way she smiled, it wasn't just small talk, it was interest. Real interest. Ethan didn't notice, but I did, and I stored that moment away in the back of my mind. The truth is, I've always been a careful man. After my wife died, I installed cameras around the house. Not because I expected betrayal, but because being alone made me cautious. I kept a small safe in the back room, and the key to that safe stayed in a drawer by my bedside. Inside, the safe wasn't treasure, not in the way Marissa might have imagined. No stacks of cash, no gold bars, no jewelry, just paperwork, photographs, and memories I didn't want to lose. Still, I knew how people like Marissa thought. They saw a safe and imagined wealth. They saw security and imagined it could be broken. I wish I could tell you I was wrong about her, that she was just curious, that her greed was in my imagination. But I wasn't wrong. One night, I saw it with my own eyes on that hallway camera I'd installed. Ethan and Marissa had come over for dinner. Ethan was helping me in the kitchen, and Marissa excused herself to make a phone call. I checked the camera later that night, and what I saw made my blood run cold. She wasn't on the phone. She was in my bedroom, standing by the drawer where I kept the safe key. Her hand hovered over it, hesitating, like she was fighting with herself. Then she pulled it open. That's when everything changed. What she saw inside didn't just stop her cold, it stripped away every illusion she had. And in that moment, she realized something she would never forget. But before I tell you what was in that drawer, you need to understand the full story. After you've lived nearly 6 decades, you start to believe you've earned a little peace. My life had been a storm for years. Losing my wife, raising my son alone, keeping my auto shop running when the economy wanted to crush small businesses. But when I finally closed the shop, I thought, this is it. This is my time to breathe. I wasn't a wealthy man by any stretch. I had enough. Enough to keep the house I built with my wife, enough for groceries, enough to fix up my old Chevy truck when it needed it. I didn't need much else. The house itself felt like my biggest treasure. Every board, every nail carried a memory. The porch where I drank coffee with my wife on Sunday mornings, the living room where Ethan took his first steps, the backyard where we'd built a rickety treehouse together, which somehow was still standing. That house was more than walls. It was my history, and history, I've learned, is more valuable than money. When Ethan introduced me to Marissa, I wanted to believe she would become part of that history. I remember the first dinner we shared. She came in wearing a red dress that almost felt too formal for a family meal, but she carried it with confidence. Ethan was beaming, proud to show her off. "Dad," he said, "this is Marissa." The woman I've been telling you about, I shook her hand, and she had a firm grip, almost competitive. "It's so good to finally meet you, Mr. Wade." "Ethan talks about you all the time," I smiled. "I hope it's all good things." She laughed, tilting her head. "Mostly good. He did warn me you can be a little stubborn. Runs in the family," I said, glancing at Ethan. We all laughed, and for a moment it felt natural. But as dinner went on, I noticed her eyes. Not the way she looked at Ethan, though she clearly adored him then, but the way she looked at my home. Her gaze lingered on the oak bookshelf I'd carved with my own hands. She studied the grandfather clock I inherited from my father. She even commented on the silver picture frames that held family photos. "You have beautiful things," she said, almost absent-mindedly, as though she wasn't talking to me, but to herself. I thanked her, but something in my gut twisted. It wasn't admiration I heard, it was calculation. Still, I tried to shake it off. Ethan loved her, and I wasn't going to be the father who judged too quickly. Over the next few months, I welcomed her as best I could. I invited them both over for Sunday dinners, shared stories from my younger days, and even showed her around the garage where I kept old tools from the shop. Ethan was happy, and for a while, that was enough for me. But I also saw patterns. Marissa was restless. She talked often about vacations she wanted to take, houses she wanted to buy, how she hated settling. She teased Ethan about thinking too small. One night, when they were over for dinner, she casually asked, "Mr. Wade, do you ever think about what you'll do with your house? I mean, one day when you're ready to, slow down even more?" I raised an eyebrow. "This house will be Ethan's. It's where he grew up." She smiled politely, but there was something sharp behind it. "Of course, that makes sense." Despite those small red flags, I didn't want to believe she was dangerous. She was family now, and family, in my eyes, meant trust. Still, I kept my habits. I had a small safe in the back room, my wife's hospital records, letters I'd written her after she passed, Ethan's childhood mementos, and a legal will I'd drawn up with my lawyer. Nothing flashy, no money to tempt thieves. But to me, that safe was sacred. The key to it stayed in the top drawer of my nightstand, a place I never imagined anyone in my family would touch. Looking back, I see the signs more clearly, but at the time, I just thought I was being paranoid. After all, this was my son's wife. Why would she betray me? Then came the night that changed everything. A night that made me realize peace is never guaranteed, not even in your own home. They say trust is built over years, but can be shattered in a single moment. With Marissa, the cracks started small, but they grew until I couldn't ignore them anymore. It was a Saturday evening when I first heard something that made me stop in my tracks. Ethan and Marissa had come over for dinner, like they often did. I was in the kitchen, just outside the living room, pouring iced tea. They must have thought I was too far away to hear. Marissa's voice was low but sharp. "Ethan, don't you ever wonder what your dad is hiding? I mean, he worked his whole life. You think he doesn't have something tucked away? He's sitting on money, I can feel it." Ethan sighed. "Marissa, my dad's not like that. He doesn't live for money. If he had $1 million, he'd still drive that rusty old Chevy. That's my point, she hissed. He wouldn't spend it. He'd just hoard it. And then what? We scrape by while he sits on some hidden fortune? Ethan, you're his only son. That should mean something. I froze, pitcher in hand, my heart hammering in my chest. My own daughter-in-law in my home, accusing me of hoarding wealth. And my son, my boy who I raised alone, wasn't shutting it down, not the way he should have. He muttered something weak, something like, "Let it go, Marissa." But that wasn't enough. Silence is permission. And that silence stung me more than her words. From that night on, I noticed more. Whenever she came over, Marissa lingered too long in the hallway where my bedroom door was. She glanced around the garage when she thought no one was looking. She even asked Ethan once, right in front of me, "Don't you wonder why your dad never talks about his finances?" Most people his age are open about retirement wills, that kind of thing. Ethan tried to laugh it off. Because he's private. That's who he is. But I saw the look in her eyes. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was hunger. The final straw came one Wednesday night. I was watching the news in the living room when Ethan called me. "Dad, Marissa's been asking questions again. She thinks you've got something hidden away." His voice cracked with embarrassment. "I told her you don't, but she doesn't believe me." I took a deep breath. "Son, what do you believe?" There was silence on the line, too much silence. Finally, he said, "I don't know, Dad. You've always been careful. You've got cameras, safes, files. Sometimes I wonder myself that hurt more than I expected. The boy I'd raised to be honest and trusting, doubting me, doubting my character. After that, I couldn't sit idle. I started checking the cameras every night before bed, and sure enough, my gut wasn't lying. One evening, after they visited, I reviewed the footage. Marissa had slipped into my bedroom while Ethan was helping me take the trash out. She moved quickly, like someone who'd rehearsed it in her head. She opened the nightstand drawer where the safe key was kept. She paused, glanced over her shoulder, and then froze. Her face changed. What she saw inside that drawer made her stiffen like stone. She shut it quickly, walked out, and plastered on a smile when she rejoined us in the kitchen. That moment was proof. She hadn't just been curious. She had planned it. She'd looked where no daughter-in-law should ever look, and now she knew about the drawer. I sat in bed that night staring at the ceiling. Anger burned hot in my chest, but beneath it was something worse. Disappointment. Not just in her, but in Ethan. How had I raised a son who couldn't see the danger in front of him? How could he sit beside a woman so consumed with greed and not draw a line in the sand? I could confront her, sure. I could move the safe, change the locks, stash the key somewhere else. But I realized none of that would fix the real problem. The issue wasn't just Marissa's greed. It was Ethan's silence. If I didn't handle this the right way, I risked losing my son to her influence forever. That's when I made a choice. If Marissa wanted to know what I kept locked away so badly, then I would let her see. I wouldn't fight her curiosity. I wouldn't even try to stop her. Instead, I'd give her exactly what she asked for. But what she would find inside that drawer wasn't what she expected. Not cash, not gold, not hidden wealth. No. What she found would strike deeper than greed could ever reach. It would break her illusions and expose the truth. And when it happened, when she finally stood face to face with the reality of what I had kept hidden, she wouldn't just regret trying to rob me. She'd never forget it for as long as she lived. Once you know someone's true intentions, you can't unsee them. After I caught Marissa on the camera, slipping into my bedroom to search through my drawer, I realized something very clearly. If I confronted her directly, she'd deny it. She'd cry, manipulate, twist Ethan against me. And the last thing I wanted was to put my son in the middle of a fight between his wife and his father. No, I couldn't charge at this head-on. I had to be smarter. I had to let her reveal herself. Let her greed expose her. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan turning in the dark, I remembered a lesson my father taught me. A man who takes without asking will always tell on himself. You just have to give him the chance. So I decided to give Marissa that chance. The next morning, I walked into my back room where the safe was kept. I opened the drawer in my bedroom where the key lay. My hand hovered over it for a long moment. Normally, I would have tucked it deep in the back of the drawer, hidden beneath some old receipts and notebooks. But this time, I set it right in the middle, easy to spot. Then I added something else. I placed a stack of envelopes there, sealed and worn from years of handling. Each envelope held pieces of my life. Letters I wrote to my late wife when grief was eating me alive, photos of Ethan as a child, old hospital receipts from when we fought to keep my wife alive, and finally, the copy of my will that named Ethan's future children as the beneficiaries of everything I owned. I wanted Marissa to see it all. If she was looking for money, she wouldn't find it. What she'd find instead was the truth, the weight of my sacrifices, the depth of my grief, and the proof that my love had always been focused on family, not wealth. But I didn't just leave it to chance. I took precautions. I angled the small hallway camera so it caught a perfect view of my bedroom door. If she tried again, I'd have it on record. This wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. I needed Ethan to see with his own eyes what kind of woman he had married. As I closed the drawer, I whispered under my breath, "You want to take from me, Marissa? Then you'll take the truth. Let's see how you handle that." That weekend, I invited Ethan and Marissa over again. "Why don't you two come by for Sunday dinner?" I asked Ethan over the phone. "I'll make pot roast, just like your mother used to." Ethan sounded pleased. Marissa chimed in from the background. "We'll be there." Her voice was cheerful, but I could hear a sharp edge to it, like she was waiting for something. I spent the day preparing. Pot roast in the oven, the table set with the good china my wife loved. But my real preparation wasn't in the kitchen. It was upstairs, in that drawer, waiting for Marissa to make her move. When they arrived, everything felt ordinary at first. We ate, laughed a little, and talked about Ethan's work. Marissa was unusually quiet, but I noticed her eyes flicking toward the hallway every so often. She was waiting for her chance. After dinner, Ethan helped me carry dishes into the kitchen. That's when Marissa excused herself. "I'm just going to freshen up," she said with a practiced smile. I knew exactly where she was headed. As Ethan washed dishes beside me, I forced myself to act normal. My chest was tight, my pulse thudding in my ears, but I didn't let it show. I glanced at the small monitor on the counter that displayed the hallway camera feed. Sure enough, there she was, moving quickly down the hall, her eyes darting. She entered my bedroom. I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the counter. Ethan chatted casually about a new project at work, completely unaware of what his wife was about to do. On the monitor, I saw her open the drawer. She froze when she spotted the envelopes stacked neatly on top of the key. Her hands trembled as she pulled one out. She looked at the name on the front, my late wife's name, and hesitated. She shouldn't have gone further, but she did. One by one, she opened the envelopes. Her confident smirk faded as she read the words I'd written years ago, raw confessions of loneliness, pain, and devotion. She sifted through photographs of Ethan as a boy, beaming with his mother's arm around him. And then she pulled out the will. The moment she realized the truth, that everything I owned was set aside not for her, not even directly for Ethan, but for children she hadn't even brought into this world yet, her face drained of color. She dropped the papers back into the drawer, her chest rising and falling quickly, as if she'd just been punched in the stomach. That was the moment. I knew then that she understood. Her greed had led her straight into the heart of my life, and instead of treasure, she'd found sacrifice, love, and pain she could never compete with. But I wasn't going to let it end with her secret discovery: number. When she came back into that kitchen, pretending nothing had happened, I was ready to confront her. Because this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about showing Ethan the truth. When Marissa walked back into the kitchen, I knew she was carrying more than just a guilty conscience. Her face gave her away. She tried to put on that same polished smile she always wore, but her hands fidgeted. Her voice cracked when she asked Ethan, "Do you need help with the dishes?" I wiped my hands on a towel and turned to face her. My voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "Marissa," I said, "why don't we sit down for a moment? There's something we need to talk about." Ethan looked up, confused. "Dad, what's going on?" "Just sit," I repeated firmly. The three of us moved into the living room. The silence was heavy. Ethan sat on the couch, glancing between his wife and me. Marissa shifted in her seat, her legs crossed tightly, her eyes darting to the hallway like she could run at any moment. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Marissa, I know where you went just now. I know what you opened." Her face drained of color. I don't know what you mean." I shook my head. "Don't lie to me. You went into my bedroom, you opened my drawer, and you saw what was inside." Ethan blinked, his head snapping toward her. "Wait, what? Marissa, is that true?" she stammered, her hands clutching at the hem of her dress. "I was just curious. I didn't take anything." "Curious," my voice rose, sharper than I intended. "That drawer doesn't belong to you. Those letters, those photos, that will, they aren't yours to touch. You broke my trust the moment you opened it." Ethan turned fully toward her now, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Marissa, you went through my dad's things? Why would you do that?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I'd seen enough of her performance before. She leaned on drama when she was cornered. "Ethan, I thought your dad was hiding money. I just wanted to know the truth. We've been struggling, and I thought maybe—" "Struggling?" I cut in. "You live in a new apartment, drive a car I know Ethan can't afford on his own salary, and you've got designer handbags stacked in your closet. Don't you dare tell me this was about survival. This was about greed." Ethan's jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists. "Marissa, please tell me you didn't." But I didn't let her spin another excuse. I stood up, my voice steady now, heavy with the truth I wanted my son to hear. "You wanted to know what I've been keeping safe all these years? Fine, let me tell you. Those letters, those were written to Ethan's mother when she was dying. They were all I had left when I couldn't save her. Those hospital bills? They're reminders of the nights I prayed for one more day with her. Those photographs. They're proof of the life I built with her and the boy we raised together." I looked directly at Marissa. "And that will you read? It doesn't leave money for you, Marissa, because I don't care about wealth. It leaves what little I have for the children you and Ethan may one day have, for their future, not yours. That's the truth you were so desperate to steal." The room went silent. Marissa's tears spilled over, but this time there was no sympathy in the air. Ethan stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You were going to rob my dad," he whispered, his voice breaking. "The man who gave me everything. The man who raised me alone after Mom died. How could you?" Marissa reached for him, her voice trembling. "Ethan, I made a mistake. I just wanted us to have a better life." He pulled back, shaking his head. "No, you wanted your life to be better. Not ours, not mine, not his, just yours." I placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Son, I don't blame you, but I need you to understand something. Trust is sacred. It's not about money or houses or cars. It's about loyalty, honesty, respect. When someone breaks that, it doesn't matter what excuse they give, you can't build a future on betrayal. Ethan nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. He turned back to Marissa, his voice quiet but firm. You've broken something I don't think we can fix. Marissa collapsed into sobs, but it was too late. The damage was done. In that moment, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt sadness. Sadness for my son, who had to face the truth about the woman he married. Sadness that greed had poisoned what could have been a family. But I also felt clarity. The secret was out. The mask was gone. And now Ethan had a choice to make, one that would shape the rest of his life. When the shouting was over and Marissa's tears had dried into silence, the house felt heavier than it ever had. The same walls that once rang with my son's laughter, the same living room where we decorated Christmas trees and opened birthday gifts, now carried the weight of betrayal. Marissa sat hunched over on the couch, her face in her hands. Ethan stood by the window staring out into the night like he didn't recognize his own life anymore. And me, I sat in my chair, exhausted, but steady. I had seen truth before, in hospital rooms when doctors told me my wife wasn't going to make it. I had seen it in Ethan's eyes when I told him at 10 years old that his mother was gone. Truth was never easy, but it was always necessary. And tonight, the truth had finally revealed itself. Marissa broke the silence first. Her voice was hoarse. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I don't know what came over me, but her apology felt like a bandage on a wound she had carved herself. Ethan turned slowly, his jaw set. Marissa, it wasn't a mistake. A mistake is spilling coffee on the carpet. This was a choice. You chose to lie. You chose to sneak around. You chose to see my father as nothing but a safe to crack open. She reached for him, but he stepped back. That distance between them said everything. I finally spoke. My voice was calm, but firm. Marissa, I don't hate you. Hate doesn't solve anything, but you've shown me who you are. And once someone shows you that, you can't pretend you didn't see it. She wiped her tears, looking at me with something between shame and anger. You don't understand. I just wanted security. I leaned forward. Security doesn't come from taking. It comes from building together. Your mother-in-law and I had nothing when we started out. We built a life brick by brick, with love, not greed. If you loved Ethan the way she loved me, you wouldn't have needed to steal. You would have trusted that together, you'd create enough. Ethan turned his face away, but I saw the tears glistening in his eyes. That night ended with no dramatic exit, no slamming doors, just a quiet unraveling. Marissa left the next morning to stay with a friend. Ethan stayed with me, his head in his hands, asking questions he wasn't ready to hear the answers to. Dad, he whispered, did I fail you? Did I fail Mom? I should have seen this coming. I put a hand on his shoulder. No, son. Love blinds us sometimes. You saw the woman you wanted her to be, not the woman she really was. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. He nodded, but I could feel his heart breaking beside me. In the days that followed, I thought a lot about what had happened, about my wife, who had given everything to protect our family, about Ethan, who now carried the burden of choosing between loyalty to his wife and the truth about her character, and about myself, about how easy it would have been to let bitterness consume me. But bitterness wasn't the lesson here. The lesson was this. Money can be stolen, but love, sacrifice, and memory cannot. Those letters in the drawer, those photos, those bills, they weren't worth a dime on the street, but they carried the value of my life. Marissa thought she'd find riches, but what she found was the cost of love, the price of sacrifice, and the promise I'd made to my grandchildren, even before they were born. She thought she'd find gold. Instead, she found the truth. A week later, Ethan told me he'd made his decision. His marriage couldn't survive this. Trust, once broken, is like shattered glass. You can try to piece it back together, but it'll never be the same. I hugged him, proud of his strength, heartbroken for his pain. "Son," I told him, "sometimes the hardest part of life isn't holding on, it's letting go. But letting go of what poisons you is the only way to make room for something better." Now, when I sit alone in my house, I don't feel the same peace I once hoped for, but I feel something else: clarity. I know that I did the right thing. I know that I stood for honesty, even when it hurt. And I know that my wife would have been proud that I protected the values we built our family on. When people ask me what happened, I don't tell them about betrayal or greed. I tell them this: if someone shows you love, hold on tight. If someone shows you greed, let go fast. Because love builds a future. Greed only burns it down. That night changed everything for me and for my son. It was painful, yes, but it taught me one of the most important lessons of my life: that the true wealth we carry isn't in money or safes. It's in the love, trust, and sacrifices that build a family. Marissa thought she'd take something from me, but instead, she learned that some treasures can't be stolen. They live in memories, in promises, and in the legacy we leave behind. And if you've ever faced betrayal, you know how heavy it feels. But you also know it makes you stronger when you choose truth over lies, love over greed, and clarity over comfort. If this story touched you, if it made you think about trust, family, or the choices we all face, then do me a favor: like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear your own stories. And if you want more stories like this, raw, real, and filled with lessons you'll carry with you, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you'll never miss a story that could change the way you see life. Thank you for spending your time with me. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and never forget what really matters.